What do 10 Nazis, Christianity, and libertarianism have to do with each other? Well, not a lot, but how we talk about them actually does. This morning, I'll discuss all of that and more on another Liberty Dad episode of Random Dad Musings. So let's find out. All right. So, welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, then I especially thank you for giving me your time so early. You know, yesterday I made a post on Twitter and man, did whoo, I stirred it up. I didn't mean to. It wasn't on purpose, but I did stir it up. And the funny thing is, my intention behind it was actually pretty well meaning. There wasn't really any malintent there. So let me pull that up because I want to show you what I said, and then I'm going to talk about it and kind of discuss like what did I mean, and kind of like what some of the comments happened to say. So let me let's see here. How do we want to do this? Let's start with the comment that I was that I was responding to. We'll start with that. And I think part of this is how it got played out because I'll talk about some of the comments in a moment. So let's put this on the screen. Let's just go with that. All right. So this fellow here, Jesse, I assume. I think it's a guy. Um, they're responding to somebody else, and you don't it's not really necessary to go through and like, okay, what were they responding to and all that. They said libertarianism smuggles in Christian morals, and those who follow it can't see how it's so. They presuppose a morality that their worldview cannot justify. And so I was like, well, I really was responding to that first part. Libertarianism smuggles in Christian morals, and I was like, no, it does not. And then I got to thinking about it. Now, I am a former evangelical. Years ago, I worked as a youth director and at a church, and I was heavily involved, and I am no longer involved. So, my response was basically my experience along with observation. And you can see there like 181 likes, 69 comments, 26 retweets for a for my size account, for the following that I have and the engagement that I typically get. This was quite a bit. Like this was like I was like, wow, this one hit. This one really hit. Like I thought I didn't really think much of it. I just thought I thought a few likes, right? Like that's what I thought. I didn't think I was saying anything profound or controversial, but apparently I was. So let's take a look at my response now. And so here's my response. I said, "Taxation is theft?" Question mark. Christians, no. Libertarians, yes. Decriminalize drugs and sex work. Christians, no. Libertarians, yes. Anti-war. Christians, no. Libertarians, yes. And then finally, abolish the death penalty. Christians, no. Libertarians, yes. And I said, someone better tell the Christians. Now, mind you, I don't have a paid account. I don't have a blue check. So I am still at the, what is it, 280 character limit on Twitter. So I have to, so like everything I say has to be within that 280 characters. And I think I usually, for something like this, I tend to max it out. And I think in this particular case, I did. So it stirred up a lot of, like a lot of people were coming at me and they're like, what, you don't think Christians can be libertarians and, or vice versa, libertarians can be Christians. And that's not what I was saying at all. And I had a few back and forths with some people. So then I made a follow-up comment and I said, for those coming across this and who are unclear, I am disputing there is any smuggling of morals going on, as the typical Christian and typical libertarian are not aligned on these major issues. That said, I stand by my prior comments on Christians and libertarianism. And then I put it, I did a screenshot of a prior comment where I said, I'm no longer a Christian, but I firmly believe the most appropriate political identification for a Christian is libertarian. Okay. So just so we're clear where I stand on this. Now let's go back to what I said and let's talk. So, first and foremost, I'm generalizing here. And it seems to me that people just in general don't do well with generalizations. Like the moment you generalize, people are like, well, not all of them like that. And it's like, well, yes, I know. I'm not saying that every single stinking one of them, whatever you're talking about, is this, right? Like uh if you say short people are bitter, right? I'm short, so I can say this and, like, nobody's gonna get angry at me because 'cause I'm at least talking about myself here, right? But if I say short people are bitter, and I'm a tall person, let's just say that. Let's pretend that I'm a tall person and I say short, like, every short person in the world is gonna be like, "Well, I'm not bitter." Like, well, yeah, it's a generalization. Now, how do generalizations work? Well, here's the funny thing. I don't think people have really thought through how they work, but in my mind, the way I see it, a generalization operates on enough members of any particular group, however a group of people are, however you are grouping people, right? Whether you're talking about short people, whether you're talking about libertarians, whether you're talking about Christians, whether you're talking about black people, white people, whatever the case is, whatever grouping, gamers, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be a grouping based on some sort of characteristic that's immutable, that doesn't change, like skin color. It could just be like, hey, Scrabble players, right? Like that is now you're kind of people when they say that they're speaking in the plural sense, Scrabble players, but more than likely they are generalizing, right? And that generalization is really a matter of I have observed or heard about enough people in a particular group to draw a conclusion about this particular group. And most people, I think, understand, they recognize it doesn't apply to all of them. So if you were to say, like if you're an atheist and you were to say, well, Christians are so pig-headed, let's just say that, right? That sounds like something an atheist might say. Let's just say that, like, you don't have to tell them that it's not all Christian. I think they understand intuitively. What they're communicating is enough Christians have behaved this way to me, or on my, I've observed this to others to give me this impression about them. Um, and it's a tricky thing, these generalizations, right? Because when it's enough of a group, that doesn't mean it's the majority of the group. It just means it's enough to have left an impression upon your mind, right? And it's tricky because it could actually be the smallest number. It could be, I mean, well, that doesn't make sense. It could be a very small number. Let's say it that way. It could be a very small number of people that leave you with this particular impression. So let's let's make this really easy to understand. Let's say that I'm watching videos, libs of TikTok videos, and I see crazy, um, I see I just see one after another, these crazy young, relatively liberal teachers talking about gender. That's what I just watch a whole bunch of them, right? And then all of a sudden, I get this impression that if you're young, you have your hair colored in some, fashion, and you're part of the gender queer community, and you're a teacher, then you're a lunatic, right? Now, I may have never met a single one of them, but by watching all those videos, I've seen enough that gives me this impression about a group, right? But there could actually be, like, for every one crazy one that I watch, there could be 10 who are just normal and I would have no problem with. So this is the challenge with generalizations. So now let's bring this back to my post. So, what am I saying here? My observation, my experience says that most Christians, or a good majority of them at least, um, they do not support the idea that taxation is theft. And what I mean by that is they will defend taxation. I believe that the majority of Christians are not prepared to decriminalize all drugs or sex work as libertarians would. I believe that there are plenty of Christians who are what I would call anti-war. In other words, they don't oppose war in the same way I do. They might say, "Hey, we should pray for peace," and that I've heard that plenty of times. But when it comes down to it, like, and we just had this happen, actually. It was with when Israel and Gaza, when that conflict arose just recently, there was a flurry of pastors. Like, we saw videos of this where they were like, Israel should level Gaza, make it a parking lot. Like, it was crazy. Like, and these were some of these pastors were, had heavy names, John Hagee. Some of them did not, right? Some of them you may not recognize, and I don't know how big their congregation is, but the thing is, we saw a whole bunch of that, and they have congregations, and they are still preaching, and so presumably, and generalizations, you're making assumptions, right? And this is because I cannot go out and perform studies, so I have to operate on observations. And so when we saw all these videos come out, I was like, all right, well, it's very clear that similar to when I was an evangelical, there is still a willingness to support war in relatively quickly. Um, then going further, abolish the death penalty. Just my experience again says that most Christians are leave room for that one to be open. And it's funny because, like, when I put the check mark on libertarians, again, that doesn't necessarily mean all libertarians, right? Like, abolish the death penalty. I know, I know at least one libertarian who is, you would consider maybe a heretic in that particular area, and that would be me. I am not fully, I have not fully removed myself from supporting the death penalty. And we're not going to get into the details here, but what I'm getting at is I'm generalizing about Christians, and I'm generalizing about libertarians. There are certainly some libertarians who will say, well, taxation is theft, but we need it in this particular case. There are some libertarians who say, well, we can decriminalize marijuana, but maybe heroin's a bridge too far. They might say, well, maybe we should decriminalize sex work, sort of, or, they might have some limitation on it. So throughout this whole post, I am generalizing for both groups. However, interestingly enough, I got hammered on one group, and it was mostly like, "Oh, what are you trying to say about Christians?" Now, I had a conversation about this whole thread with a friend of mine, and he was like, "Well," he was like, "the way it's written," he goes, "it kind of leads people to believe that you might be anti-Christian, but I'm not. Promise you, I'm totally not." So, um, this was an interesting thing for me to observe, play out, because you had all these conversations and stuff like that. May have to get interrupted here for my little guy. So I don't, I may have to cut this short. I don't know. My wife has left, folks, and he is, he's, you know what? Let me pause this stream. I'm not prepared for this one. So let me pause this stream and see if I can't go and calm my little one down real quick. So he seems to have um, be be a little bit on the upset side. So give me just a moment, folks. All right, I think we are back, folks. I apologize for that interruption. Um, my little one, he has woken up. He's waking up. He's awake, and it's part of being a Liberty Dad. That's how it goes. All right, so where were we? I was discussing this, this post that I had and how interesting it was. And what was very interesting about this is just to kind of see all these comments. And so, what I want to do is I want to tie this in to the idea of Nazis, which is weird. But I promise you, I'm going to take this somewhere and I think it's going to be useful. So let me show you something else that I saw. And this is just I clipped this, but this actually comes from another post. I'm not going to actually show you the post itself. I'm just going to show you the thing that was that they had posted. And so it says German saying, if 9 people sit down at a table with one Nazi without protest, there are 10 Nazis at the table. Now, I disagree with this. And there's been some argument about this. And one of the things that makes me disagree is because wh- I, I think it's the without protest and then there are 10 Nazis. So it is presuming that if 9 people sit down with one bad egg, they will basically be a bad egg unless they protest and basically call this person out. That's generally the term that people want. They say, "Well, you got to call people out, otherwise." And I actually disagree with this, and I think this ties in not because there's a relationship between Nazis and Christians and and libertarians. It's because at the end of the day, how we communicate about ideas is the biggest and most important thing. So when my friend pointed out, "Hey, in this thread here, you came across as negative toward Christians." And you could pick it apart in any number of ways. You could look at it and say, "Well, you had all these red X's, so immediately when people see it, they just like red X just kind of says negative, right? You're generalizing about people. You're saying, hey, all these Christians are this, or all these libertarians are this. A lot of people presumed it to mean that if you were one, you couldn't be the other. That there was this natural animosity of what I want to say animosity. There was this natural conflict between the two, like you could be one or the other, but not both, right? So all of this, like the reason that this post got so much attention is because I miscommunicated, or maybe I didn't miscommunicate, but I didn't add enough detail in order for people to understand what I was trying to communicate. So, what does that, what in the world does that have to do with 10 Nazis sitting at a table? Well, it's this idea, because think about it. Think about what this says. If 9 people sit down at a table with one Nazi without protest, so the whole idea is wrapped around this is how you must communicate, or else, right? Or else you are a Nazi now, right? And in the same sense, I needed to communicate a certain way, or else people thought I was against Christianity, or I thought that Christianity and libertarianism were mutually exclusive. And I think this is all about how we communicate. Now, I want to show you something. Um, and this is a clip from Russell Brand. Now, let's see. I'm trying to think here if I want to show everything here, or how do I want to show this? Yeah, we got a couple of minutes. We got some time. Okay. So let me show you this trailer first, and then I'm going to show you a clip from Russell Brand's, from his podcast. And this clip is called, it's a trailer for White Right Meeting the Enemy. And it's a documentary by a woman named Dia Khan. So I'm going to play this clip for you. And we are going to then play this other clip. So let me go ahead and bring that up on the screen. There we go. And we're going to share that. And then let's see here. So let me moving some things around on the screen so that I can see them in the way that I want them. All right. There we go. All right, let's play this clip.
My hair okay? It's not flying around in funny directions.
So as you know, I am a woman of color.
Yes.
Yes. I am the daughter of immigrants. I am a Muslim. I am a feminist. I am a lefty liberal.
I
She's
wouldn't
I
have
see
ever
your
basically
guessed
face.
that.
she's
And what I
everything
want
he
to
doesn't
ask
like.
you is, am I your enemy?
You're not subjectively my enemy, but what you are promoting will lead to the disappearance of my people and my culture. And I will tell you this, it annoys me tremendously when I'm told by some immigrant or a child of immigrants that the only reason my country is worthwhile is because people like them have come here. It's as if to say, my ancestors built a dung heap, and I don't doubt your goodwill, but your goodwill is objectively going to lead to the oblivion of my people. I'm sorry, there is no other way to see it.
Wild words, folks.
My name is Dia Khan. I'm an activist and filmmaker. When I was 6 years old, my father took me to my first rally against racism and fascism. I grew up in Norway, where white skinhead gangs terrorized our small Muslim community. My father told us things would change, but extremism and racism are on the rise again in Europe and America. I decided to meet people who think the white race is under threat, and that I am their enemy. Fuck you! Get a heart attack, nigger! I met neo-Nazis.
Jews and homosexuals, they should be exterminated, every single one of them.
History will decide who is superior.
Men who say they've lived lives of racist violence.
Nigger, prepare to burn. You've attacked our people, and now it's your turn. I've hurt people horrifically with my bare hands.
I've been to prison. I've kidnapped people. I've harmed people. I've done things that you would think I'm insane.
And I sat down with the new leaders of the white nationalist movement, men from privileged and elite backgrounds.
We did it. We took it. We took it with force. We won.
Shame! Shame on all of you! Shame!
I joined the extremists on the front lines of the race wars in America. I wanted to see if I could understand their anger, to get to know the personal reasons why they are drawn to such hatred and division.
Fuck you!
All right. Apologies for the language there, folks. I forgot about that. I didn't actually watch the entire clip before I played it. So apologize for not giving you the warning on the profanity there. We do try to keep it clean here as much as possible. Now, that was the film White Right Meeting the Enemy by Dia Han. I pronounced her name incorrectly. And as she started out by saying she's a woman, she's a feminist, she's a Muslim, she's brown skinned, right? Like she's all these things that a Nazi, and when I say Nazi, like a real Nazi, not this nonsense that we say, well, you're just a Nazi, like not that, like the people who say I am a Nazi. I hope that doesn't get clipped because that could be weird. But she went out to meet with those folk, the people who self-identify as white supremacists, because she was like, I want to meet them and I want to understand why you hate. What's going on here? Okay. So now then she did the film, and I did watch the film. I watched the entire film, and I'm telling you, it is a good watch. So I highly recommend finding the film and watching it. Now the gentleman, there's a particular guy. Where is he at? I'm gonna in this guy right here. So I'm gonna bring him back up on the screen really quickly. So this guy here, she's actually talking about him um, in this clip that I'm about to show you with Russell Brand. So she's talking about this man right here. His name is, drawing a blank on his name. Ken Parker. His name is Ken Parker. He's actually here in Jacksonville. Fun enough. So let's go to this clip here, and we're going to. All right, so this is the clip. So this is Dia. Sorry, little buddy. This is Dia Han, and she is on Russell Brand's show, and this is called "How Love Will Defeat Hate." So I want you to hear her conversation. So she's being asked about Ken Parker here.
Still quite polite and
Very
charming.
polite. No,
other
no,
than that it's
really,
a
really,
rally.
really. And I was going, "Pff, okay, great. Yeah, I
How,
would
what
love
did
to
you
do
think of
that."
him by this stage? Did you like him?
I liked him.
Does it? So
That
does it-
sounds really counterintuitive, right? Right, for a person like me to sit there and somebody who considers me to be a shit skin and a degenerate and all
Did you
kinds
say
of
stuff like that during the conversation?
no, because he wasn't able to. So what I did do is that I told him all those things. I described myself in those terms because that's how I'd been described by people in the past and also in the threats that I'd received. So I kept using these words about myself just to his face. We sat this far apart from each other. And every time I would use a word like that about myself, he would just squirm and be really uncomfortable. And then I just started laughing and going, look, I mean, obviously, this isn't the first time that you're hearing words like this. I'm assuming you use words like this. And if you don't, then people around you certainly do. So why are you so uncomfortable? And he just couldn't answer, but he was really uncomfortable. And I said, do you not want me to use language like that? And he's like, no, I don't. And so, so part of that question that I had, is it possible to hate in up close and personal? And face to face, obviously it wasn't possible for him. It is possible for many other people, but it wasn't possible for him.
What does that make you think?
That
Here's the key.
something else is possible.
Okay, listen.
That also my judgments against people like him, my prejudices, and my kind of very flat caricature that I carry in my mind and my heart about men like that is also incorrect. So it says something about me as well.
All right, so that's what I wanted you to hear. So I wanted you to hear her talk. So she went out and she met Ken Parker and other people, and she found out that Ken Parker, when she talked to him, felt uncomfortable with some of the things that he probably felt very comfortable with, or at least didn't appear to feel uncomfortable with around his friends, some of these comments and these sayings. And it gave her this realization like, hey, wait a minute. I have prejudices about this person. And it made her realize that there is something more, even to people like Ken Parker. There is something more. So whenever this conversation about 10 Nazis comes up, whenever this comes up, people always talk about Daryl Davis. Now, I don't have any of his clips at the moment. I just wanted to show you this one. Most people are very familiar with Daryl Davis. He's the guy that he's the black man. He's a black jazz musician who has been to Klan rallies. And so his story is pretty simple. When he was a young lad, he was in a march. I can't remember what kind of march it was, and he got some things thrown at him. He didn't know what was going on. It was later explained to him that people were being racist to him, and so then he had this like burning question, like, why do people hate me who've never even met me? And so when he got older, he decided to go and find out. And he had his secretary reach out to a Klan member and say, "Hey, my boss wants to have a meeting with you." But she didn't tell him my black boss. She just said my boss would like to have a meeting with you. And so he met up with a guy named Roger Kelly. And then him and Roger Kelly had a conversation. And he was there to find out, why do you hate me? And he was under no illusion that he was going to try to change this man's mind. And he said this. He said, like, look, I was just there to find out the why. That's it. And over time, they built a relationship, and it actually got to the point where they would eat at each other's houses, where Roger Kelly would come to his jazz shows, where Daryl Davis would attend the Klan rallies. And I think he went to some of his children's events. So Daryl Davis went to, I think, Roger Kelly's like his child's like daughter's recitals or something like that. So they actually started becoming friends. Okay. And it all started with one guy sitting down with effectively a literal Nazi. So it wasn't even 9, it was 1 and 1. And he sat down without protest. And I've argued with people and they're like, well, he was technically protesting because he was there. Like, no, he wasn't protesting. He didn't argue with the man. He sat down and inquired and said, I want to know more about you. And through that, Roger Kelly ended up leaving the Klan. Similarly, with Dia Khan,
Um,
let's see here. What do I want to do with Dia Khan? When we look at Ken Parker, and I'm trying to put him back up on the screen here real quick. So let's go back to that, and we will let's see here. This guy. So similarly with Dia Khan, she just set out to inquire, to learn more, ended up meeting this man, Ken Parker. And Ken Parker also renounced his white supremacy. And I don't remember what positions he held, but he renounced it as well. And you heard him. He was like, look, Jews and homosexuals and blacks, and like he's saying all these things. And what was interesting about this film, if you watch it, is she asked she asked him, she said, why are you so nice to me? So Dia asked Ken, why are you nice to me? I'm a brown person. I'm a Muslim. I'm literally the person that you don't like. And he said, he goes, you're the first Muslim I've ever met, and you've actually been nice to me. And he was like, it was unexpected. It was unexpected when, and he said this, his girlfriend was in the hospital, and the only person to call him it was either Dia or a Muslim from like the mosque or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but basically, the only person to call him and find and check on his girlfriend was a Muslim, the very person that he was hating, and that's that's the key, I think, to all of this. That ties in everything here. It is communicating with people in a way that opens the door for communication back. So when I set out, I was only trying to communicate this idea that, hey, I think this person's wrong. There's no smuggling of Christian morals. What's happening is that there is already some alignment between libertarianism and Christianity. There are plenty of Christians who are libertarians and vice versa, naturally. So, but my communication led to misunderstanding. Now, it's not so much that Nazis are misunderstood. It's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that they are trying to communicate something. And if we sit down with the door open, we can learn something. So if I had posted and then just kind of dug my heels in and said, no way, all of you just don't get it, then I wouldn't have had the opportunity to look at my own words and say, "Oh, looks like I didn't communicate what I thought I wanted to communicate. People are misunderstanding me." Similarly, if I'm talking to a Nazi or somebody of that kind of disrepute, I need to be open in hearing what they have to say. So the connection is not the ideologies. The connection is, how do we communicate to other people? Do we leave the opportunity for them to communicate back? Or are we building a wall where we're basically tossing over our ideas and then expecting them to consume them, but unwilling to consume any of their ideas in return? And when we do that, the barriers of, the social relations break down. Negative things happen. On the far end of the extreme, you've got you've got like white supremacists who, hate black people and Jews and who else, whoever else. On the lighter end, it's just a simple tweet that maybe gets misunderstood. So I hope I'm making the connection here, folks. And let me know if I'm not doing a good job, because I understand. I mean, like this podcast is me communicating an idea. And the idea, oddly enough, is that I'm communicating how we communicate matters. And it matters whether it's a simple tweet or whether we want to understand hate. How we communicate to others paves the way for how they communicate back. And we should always be vigilant about our own communication, more so than others. So I could have in that tweet just been like, well, I said everything perfectly and y'all just don't understand. And to a degree, I kind of said that to my friend, like behind the scenes. I was like, hey man, I was like, it seems like a lot of people are understanding it and a lot of people aren't. And, and my good friend, when he speaks, I listen. So I was like, when he was like, well, look, if I didn't know you, he said, I might just think that you are anti-Christian. And I was like, wow, okay, that's a little bit of a revelation, because I'm not. And then I got to thinking about it. I was like, well, wait a minute. There were a lot of people that did like my comment, but a lot of them are followers. So they too probably know me a little bit, or at least know about me. And so maybe he was right. Maybe my communication there was crafted, unfortunately, in a way where more than likely, if you didn't know me, you might not understand where I was trying to come from. So let's bring this back to this whole Nazi thing. Pull this comment right back up on the screen. German saying, 9 people sit down at a table with one Nazi without protest. And I'm quibbling with this without protest. I don't believe that you have to protest. What I believe is you have to be open. Right now, that doesn't mean that you give in. That doesn't mean that you say, "Well, it's okay. Your ideas are not so bad." That's not what I'm saying either. You don't have to accept. You can sit down with somebody and say, "I think your ideas are." Where are you going, buddy? Okay. All right. You can sit down and say, I think your ideas are absolutely offensive and they bother me and I don't like them. But you also need to be willing to hear them. So let's go back to this Daryl Davis in one of his clips. And I don't have it. I apologize for not bringing it. Now that I think about it, I probably should have had it right at the ready. But in his TED talk, he talks a lot about this idea of respect. And you'll see, like, he talks about, there was a respect between him and Roger Kelly, a respect to hear the other person's ideas, no matter how vile they thought they were, right? And both of them at one point felt that way. They felt like the other person has a terrible idea, right? This is but they were willing to hear each other out. And what's interesting is he plays this clip from I think it was CNN, who'd heard about him, and they did a documentary. And well, maybe not a documentary, but they just did a report on him. And they have a clip of Roger Kelly talking, and he said, "I respect this man more than I do." I think he said, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say it because I don't want to say something offensive and then not even get it right. But he was like, I respect this man more than I do some white people. And he said, because he listens and he respects me. Now, this was while he was a Klan member, while he was in Klan garb at a Klan rally. And this is what Roger Kelly said to him, right? And this is because one man was willing to sit down at the table with him without protest. He didn't protest. Dia sat down. Now she probably did protest a little bit, but if you listen to her, it sounded like she didn't go into it with the intention of, I'm going to protest your idea. She probably just through the natural course maybe made some pushback. And if you watch the film, if you watch White Right Meeting the Enemy, you'll see where she sits there with Ken Parker and she's like, do these words make you uncomfortable? And he's like, well, yeah, I wish you wouldn't say that, you know? I don't, you know, and she's like, she's talking to him and she's not really protesting. She's just asking questions, right? All she's doing is, here is my line. Here is where I am. Now let me inquire and open up with where you are. That's not protest. That's listening. That is giving enough respect to hear the other person. Because when you do that, when you give that a person, no matter what where it is, no matter whether it's on Twitter, no matter who it is, whether it's somebody that you normally agree with, but this time you're not, or whether it's somebody you vehemently dislike because they have some terrible, awful views. When you give people that respect, they open up. And then they, in turn, when they open up and they realize that you're willing to hear them, they become willing to hear you. And that is how we make a better world, by simply observing and paying attention to our own communication and leaving the door open to hear what other people are saying. So, if you're tweeting and you get a lot of negative responses, think about it. What are they saying? Open yourself up. That's what I did. Right now, I push back a little bit and argue with some people, but at the end of the day, I took it serious. I said, "Well, this is me communicating an idea, and if a lot of people aren't understanding what I'm trying to say, then I need to change how I'm communicating, right?" And so, but I can only do that if I'm willing to listen and hear what other people were saying and give them the respect that they have something to say. And that's my musings for today, is that we need to learn how to be open about communication and hear other people. And when we do that, we can get to a good place. Better things happen. Relationships strengthen or build. They're created. Um, with Daryl Davis, he actually built he started out with just this idea of, I'm going to find out why this man, why these people don't like me. And then he just listened, asked some questions. And he's like, I just basically took down notes of when people said stuff, just listened. I go, oh, wow, okay. And that's why they were willing to hear him out. And then eventually they started realizing, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe black people aren't so bad after all, right? Like that's what Roger Kelly, more than likely at some point thought, because he eventually left the Klan. Okay. So that's my show today, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. I do. And thank you for watching. You can catch me every morning, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m., for an informed discussion on politics and culture. And then again, Sundays at 7 p.m. with my co host, Susan Hogarth. We are going to look across the vastness of tyranny in this country. And there's plenty out there. And then we're going to see what the LP is up to, the Libertarian Party. Are they even busy? Are they everybody talks about a third party, but is there one? Why, yes, there is. Libertarian Party. And there's enough going on that we can talk about what the Libertarian Party is doing every single Sunday night at 7 p.m. So make sure you join me for that. Make sure that you are also subscribed to my YouTube channel, or just subscribe to Rumble. You can go to youtube.libertydad.com. You can go to rumble.libertydad.com. Subscribe to my show there, and let me know how I'm doing. Leave a comment. Tell me, like, Dale, hey, if it's a rough one, it's a rough one, right? If you say, hey, DL, the show's kind of boring, you need to pep it up a little bit. Those are the kind of things like I said here in today's show, I'm open to listening. So just, maybe not too harsh, like, feel like you effing suck. I might not listen to that one. But if you let me know, like, how I'm doing, I do read the comments. Lastly, I want you to remember, if you are a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. Have a great week. Catch you tomorrow.